This is pertaining to Doomsday. Doomsday scenarios pertaining to preppers. And because of privacy rights, I cannot show the pictures of what is being discussed right now, but I can allow for my viewers to listen to it as a teaching aid instructing tool. So please, to my viewers, I'm sorry that I'm not going to be able to enhance what you're going to hear by allowing for you to see the actual testimonies coming from various people. But what I can do is allow for you to listen to it and draw your own conclusions. And I will be stopping periodically from time to time and discussing just exactly what my opinion is about all of this. So please, thank you for listening. This is the Doomsday scenario preparation.
Government simply sees Americans as a commodity. Who is to blame? A hierarchy of corporate and government interests so intertwined that they must monitor every American citizen? Or should we point the finger at ourselves and our own complacency? One thing is certain. The age of Big Brother has not only arrived, it has only just begun. An atomic attack.
The American public had no idea we were 2 hours away from a nuclear holocaust.
Cyber warfare.
It can shut down our power grids, so you don't have transportation, water, food, and that would be very scary.
A deadly airborne virus.
They have control of biological weapons, not just here in the United States, but worldwide.
The list of doomsday scenarios facing America today is terrifying.
Doomsday is not a question of if, it's when.
But what is the government doing to protect the nation from the ultimate disaster? And why are their plans being kept so secret?
The secrecy itself could hasten catastrophe.
In the end, who will be saved? And who will be left to die?
The bunkers will be holding the political leadership. We, the American people, we're not going to be allowed in. Get out. We have to save the important people.
There are those who believe in the existence of a book. A book that contains the most highly guarded secrets of the United States of America. A book whose very existence is known to only a select few. But if such a book exists, what would it contain? Secret preparations? Secret bunkers? Secret strategies? Does there really exist America's Book of Secrets?
Yes, it does.
January 14th, 2014. The Doomsday Clock, an iconic and universally recognized symbol representing the countdown to global catastrophe, is set to just 5 minutes before midnight. Maintained by the Science and Security Board of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, the closer they set the clock to midnight, the closer they believe the world is to global disaster. The latest recorded time is due to growing nuclear threats in China, Pakistan, and India, the ongoing construction of nuclear plants, and constant threats of severe climate change. Some believe such calamities are imminent, and the final countdown to doomsday has already begun.
I think it's inevitable there will be a doomsday, but certainly it's a question of your definition. Because doomsday means different things to different people. To the military, it's nuclear weapons. To a banker, it's the collapse of the Federal Reserve. For other people, it's the epicite gene breaking into the wild and sterilizing all of the human race.
When you look at all the different things that could happen, it is a reality. We have to be ready for a major Armageddon-like scenario. Many civilizations have come and gone because they weren't prepared for a Krakatoa or a Pompeii volcano-type explosion. There's incredible evidence that we're hit by comets and asteroids every few hundred years. So the question isn't if, but when we're going to be struck by one of these extinction-level events.
Right.
According to insiders, the United States government is spending billions of dollars a year on doomsday preparations.
In the wake of 9/11, everyone saw President Bush down in Florida.
Today, we've had a national tragedy and an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
And then we saw reports of how he was being flown to different parts of the United States. Dick Cheney, the vice president at the time, has spoken about being sent off into a bunker.
Cheney believed that Al-Qaeda had somehow ferreted a nuclear weapon inside the U.S. and that an explosion in an American city was imminent. There was so much unknown about the scope of the threat, and in an emergency, we expect as citizens the government to be able to perform. And so it made sense for the government to create a cadre of government workers who could perform these emergency functions.
In March 2002, 6 months after 9/11, a Washington Post article revealed that President George W. Bush had put into action a secret plan to hide and protect members of the United States government. Known as the Continuity of Operations Plan, or COOP, the program dates back to the Cold War, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower feared nuclear attack by the Soviets. It is also a program that most Americans do not even know exists.
The Continuity of Operations Plan is the U.S. government program to ensure that in the wake of a cataclysmic attack or disaster, that government will continue to function and provide the services that it needs to its citizenry, to ensure the survival of the American people.
But just how will the government protect the public against a cataclysmic event? And what will happen if high-ranking officials do not survive?
If the president is killed, we know the vice president takes over. Who takes over if they're both killed? It's the Speaker of the House. And it goes on to cabinet officers. But what if they're all wiped out? Then these plans have further contingencies to appoint various Defense Department individuals or watch officers.
It's very important to preserve continuity of government and continuity of command over the military, but also over civilian things. Who decides whether an area is going to be evacuated or not? They put a lot of thought and effort into trying to make sure that the U.S. could continue to function as a government and as a society.
The government that will come into power during the Doomsday scenario may not be the leaders that we know today, because we might not be able to get the president to safety. So this shadow government comes into power to continue the function of the U.S. government.
And so, in the name of stopping or preparing for a doomsday threat, we've actually built a doomsday government, unaccountable, above the law, living off of trillions of dollars of taxpayer money.
April 1st, 1979, President Jimmy Carter activates the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Its mission is simple: to assist the public after a disaster. But what most people don't know is that a lot of what the agency does is considered classified information.
FEMA is the primary coordinator of all emergency actions across the government. So FEMA makes sure that every resource that the executive branch has is brought to bear on an emergency. But during an emergency where these continuity of operations plans are put into effect, FEMA has quite a bit of power and quite a bit of central coordinating authority.
FEMA has a thing called cable splicer, where if there's a disruption of our government, they will then step forward and they become the government. Many people believe FEMA is already the real government, and everybody else we see, they're puppets, and FEMA's pulling the strings.
I once asked a FEMA administrator how much time he spent in the secret part of his job, the part not dealing with hurricanes. He said 40% of his job is spent dealing with the preparations for Doomsday, for making sure that these shelters, these bunkers, these alternate sites that the government has are functioning and operating.
Since FEMA was first created, the federal government has been buying large tracts of land and stockpiling them with trailers and other supplies for survival. But many have begun to question just how these so-called FEMA camps will actually be used during a time of national crisis.
The government, they spend about $5 billion a year on these plans. But most of that stuff is secret, and FEMA does do a lot of preparation that, when interpreted a certain way, can give rise to the idea that they are preparing for martial law.
And there's been numerous stories that talk about FEMA camps and some of the nefarious purposes that they could fulfill. Things like controlling the masses.
Most of these so-called FEMA camps, it is an issue that they could be closed off in a time of crisis and rapidly adapted to hold a population under control. Simply because the government, when it feels it has an excuse, will do whatever it wants to and then say, hey, it was national emergency.
FEMA believes they're the good guy riding in on the white horse. Some believe they're riding in on the white horse of the apocalypse. If something goes wrong, FEMA plans to step up, take over, and tell you and I what to do for our own good.
Is FEMA really preparing to aid U.S. citizens in the event of a sudden calamity? Or might their efforts really be providing cover for another, more secret objective? Coming up.
In the event of a doomsday situation, there are secret locations where the leaders of our country will be taken.
Even today, I'm not supposed to discuss particulars of these secret locations.
Attention, Medicare bet.
Your former Nazis are working on rockets. Von Braun, he's ahead of the whole thing.
New visitor center built underneath the Capitol building opens 3 years behind schedule and more than $300 million over budget. The 580,000 square foot, 3-level subterranean complex can accommodate 4,000 tourists at a time. But curiously, the lowest level of the government facility is off limits to the public.
The Capitol Visitor Center has been the object of much speculation and mystery. And the fact that it was so over budget and years late in construction gave rise to the theory that what was actually happening was that all of that over budget and being late was a cover for Congress building itself a huge new secure bunker right underneath the Capitol.
Should there be another 9/11 type attack on Washington, D.C., this is where they're going to go. It's 3 stories underneath the visitor center. They want to be so low that the radiation, the bombs, whatever, can't affect them.
The visitor center is fully equipped with bomb-proof skylights, thousands of feet of fiber optic cable for telecommunications, and a tunnel large enough to accommodate semi-trucks. But the official blueprints have been withheld from the public. Could the controversial structure really be doubling as a secret bunker? One built for the capital's political elite in case of emergency? According to some researchers, the government has been quietly building underground safe houses throughout the country since the early 1940s, when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt started to guard against the threat of Nazi saboteurs.
Throughout the United States, there are secret locations where the leaders of our country will be taken to if the event of a doomsday situation. They're in mountains, they're under fields, but for the most part, we have no idea that they're even there. We may even, in fact, be walking on top of them. Most of these will remain secret for the reasons being that we can't have them susceptible to attack by our enemies.
I became Vice President Quayle's Chief of Staff a few months into the administration, so it's been the summer of 1989. And I was read into, as they say, briefed about these programs. And at some point, they wanted to take me to a certain location where we would be taken in the case of an attack. But I think even today, I'm not supposed to discuss particulars of these secret locations, but there certainly were underground locations where senior government officials would have been taken in the case of a nuclear attack or a threatened nuclear attack.
The plan of the elite is to go underground in the event of a doomsday scenario and emerge to their brave new world.
In 2007, the National Security Agency set up offices in a nuclear bunker, 1/3 of a mile deep inside the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado. Some believe this could be the government's secret base of operations during an enemy attack.
Cheyenne Mountain is 5,000 or 6,000 feet high, and it is at the bottom in the middle of this mountain, virtually impenetrable, and all of the buildings inside Cheyenne Mountain are mounted on these giant springs, so if you have any sort of nuclear attack, the buildings just wobble a little bit and they go about their merry way.
But what about the President of the United States? Are there perhaps even more sophisticated plans to keep the country's leader out of harm's way?
In the event of a doomsday attack, the president now could go to an underground bunker at the White House. But in addition, he could escape through secret tunnels under the White House grounds and hopefully get to the Doomsday plane, where he could operate for an extensive period of time and control the nation's military facilities and launch counterattacks.
Night Watch was the designation for the 747 airplane that he would be on. It's essentially Air Force One with steroids. This is the plane that would ensure the president can stay in a functional power for the U.S. government.
The $223 million modified jumbo jet is protected against nuclear strikes by thermo-radiation shields. It is also equipped with telecommunications capabilities that allow the president access to any location in the world.
It can stay up longer than most planes. It is designed to just continually fly around and have communications capability and sophisticated defense mechanisms so that no matter where the president is, he's still the president.
Perhaps the most surprising secret about the nation's doomsday bunkers is that they're only built to accommodate an elite number of government officials. So what does that say about the fate of the other more than 300 million U.S. citizens?
We, the American people, are paying for protective systems that we, the American people, will not be allowed to avail ourselves of. We're not going to be allowed in. Thank you for all the money. Get out. We have to save the important people.
But some Americans are taking matters into their own hands, prepping for the ultimate doomsday scenario. And these extreme survivalists may unwillingly become the government's greatest asset. Will they really be able to take cover, or will their cover be blown?
few clicks away. You're
Atchison, Kansas. Hidden beneath these rolling hills overlooking the Missouri River lies a large complex of limestone caves. Excavated more than 100 years ago and used as a storage facility for the Army, the site is being transformed into the largest private doomsday bunker in the country. When finished, this $30 million shelter will measure 3/4 of a mile long by half a mile wide and more than 100 feet deep, and will be able to house as many as 5,000 people for an entire year. It will also be the second of several such community shelters planned and built by the Vivos Group since 2008.
What we've done is design shelters to withstand everything. I'm worried about an economic collapse. I'm worried about martial law. I'm worried about an asteroid. I'm worried about Planet X. And the preparation for each one of those things is a little bit different.
According to a 2012 report, more than 3 million Americans consider themselves survivalists or preppers. Some going to extreme measures to prepare for a worst-case scenario.
People that are prepping run the gamut. Some are paranoid. Some understand that our society is precariously unstable, and it's important to be prepared. I mean, my grandparents, they all had canned food, extra gasoline, and a tank out back. They were all prepared because they'd lived through the Depression, and they knew that the system can't and won't protect you during a real crisis.
Back in the 60s, the American public had no idea we were 2 hours away from a nuclear holocaust. We didn't find out how close we really came to nuclear war until the past couple of years. One of them not telling us those secrets should make people say, well, I got to take care of myself.
The community shelter option offers certain survivalists the opportunity to buy into a fully equipped doomsday bunker. So far, Vivos claims over 25,000 applicants for their shelters. Securing space in these bunkers costs between $7,000 and $50,000 per person. And like the underground bunkers built by the government, these shelters will be capable of withstanding a nuclear blast. They also will be equipped with comfortable living and dining areas, and even medical facilities.
I like that concept because it does have a community, a base to it, and they're very big and well built. But personally, I don't know if I would go there. I don't like having someone else have the key to my safety, because what if they wanted to change the password and didn't tell me?
Only members know the exact location of their shelter. But just how will the company ensure that their bunkers will be completely safe in the end times?
You don't just walk into a Vivos shelter. They're extremely secure. We can tell whether you're a member or not from as far as half mile to a mile away. We're not out to have to put up offenses and hopefully not defenses even. We just want to be left alone.
But not every survivalist trusts a privately owned and operated community shelter. And others fear that the government may even have secret plans to swoop in and reclaim some of the old 1950s bomb shelters on Doomsday. So just what covert methods are private preppers using? February 1st, 2014. A workshop just outside Phoenix, Arizona. Tim Ralston, an extreme survivalist who creates tools for doomsday preppers, is making what he calls an axe. A combination of a knife, axe, machete, and hatchet.
You've got to have an axe, you've got to have a machete, and some type of camp knife that can do smaller work. It still has two-handed strike capability, so you can still really get a lot of power in it. This is one of those tools that's a must-have.
Some preppers believe the government won't be able to provide for the public in the event of doomsday, and that every citizen should be prepared at all times with enough food and water to last at least 72 hours.
In the event of a major breakdown, it's not just food, but medicine, ammunition, all these things can become in such short supply that people are willing to kill for.
For those that say, what could happen? How bad could it get? I give you Katrina. Things happen. We learned that this safety net of the government has big holes in it. There is no safety net. And these people saw that, they had an awakening, and now they're trying to prepare just in case so they can feed their family and keep their family warm.
But some fear the government is targeting this seemingly harmless group of survivalists. According to insider reports, the National Guard keeps a list of doomsday preppers and will give orders to its soldiers to treat them as terrorists in the event of a national emergency.
And so you've got a bunker in the middle of the desert or of the mountains, and you think that you're safe because nobody knows where you're hiding. But our government agencies who are locating and making maps of where all the people are who have all the stuff that will become necessary in the event of a disaster.
The government probably is tracking preppers. They want to know where the stored food is, where the stored ammunition is, where the materials are that might be grabbed at least by local jurisdictions and co-opted for the government's purposes.
And don't think, I repeat, don't think that the United States government isn't capable of that, because during the Civil War, they basically done the same thing towards ravaging farms and surviving off of the civilians' chickens and cows and milk and goats. Don't think that the military won't do this, because they will in a time of a major crisis. It's really, really pathetic in knowing that just within the past little more than a month ago, our government basically put out a civilian warning to the civilians to start prepping and to start preparing for a doomsday scenario. Keep in mind, in 1993, whenever the Waco Davidian incident happened down by Mount Carmel, that was their sole purpose, was for prepping and getting ready for a doomsday scenario. Now, all of a sudden, our government is requiring or recommending for their citizens to start preparing. So, what they have just said, this analogy towards the government keeping up with people that are stockpiling guns, stockpiling and hoarding food, don't think that this scenario that these people are talking about could not and would not actually occur. Because whenever it comes to the survival skills of the United States government, they are basically at their wits' end right now, and they know it, with us being $21+ trillion, $21.5 trillion in debt. So they know that the system is going to collapse. They don't know the exact day or week or month that it's going to collapse, but they know that it's going to collapse because there's no way for it to be self-sustainable. Because of this, they are already making preparations ahead of time so that after the dust and debris settles, they'll be able to crawl out of their bunkers after surviving off of their civilians' supplies and possibly even surviving in some of their civilian bunkers, that they'll be able to come out and start all over again. It's pathetic how that we have seen various corrupt politicians and high-ranking officials that are willing to save their own skins, but in reality don't have a plan to save ours. It's pathetic.
For the original hardcore preppers, the government is not just useless, it's actually an enemy planning to take away our guns or suppress civil liberties.
Are doomsday preppers really being monitored by the federal government? A government who eyes them as a source for potential backup supplies
Sure.
in the wake of a cataclysmic attack?
Sure they are.
Perhaps. But there are those who fear the United States government has another, even more shocking agenda. One which will allow not only for the confiscation of property and supplies, but for the complete control of every last American citizen.
Whenever this program first started, it talked about the worst case scenario was in regard to a cyber attack towards everything basically becoming shut down. We have become solely dependent upon our gizmos and gadgets pertaining to our smartphone technology that if this was to occur, it would basically throw all of us off into the dark ages. And they know it. They know it. I'm going to say it one more time. They know it. And regardless whether it be something that occurred on a catastrophic event such as a solar flare or a meteor shower or even an enemy that wound up doing something crazy up in space that could shut us down and put us in these dark ages, the government is going to take care of the government. And if have to, they will use their citizens as human shields. Once more, what did the program start out saying? It said that we was nothing more than commodities, and we will be selected based upon who we are and what we are as far as our importance. Are you a banker? Are you a doctor? I remember my father talking about what went on during World War II, that it got so severe during World War II of our survival over here in America that they was actually putting restrictions upon tires. They was putting restrictions upon food. They was putting restrictions upon gas. They would give out cards or stamps, and if you wound up using those stamps before your time towards getting another portion of stamps, then you was tough out of luck. In other words, they was devoting all of their resources towards fire and rescue, ambulances, military, law enforcement. So whenever it comes to the government basically militarizing its police force, don't think for a second that the United States government hasn't done already pre-planned towards what it's going to do and how it's going to do it. So what this program is talking about towards the government spying in on knowing who's got hoarding abilities towards hoarding guns or hoarding food or doing whatever, sure, they're doing that. And the reason why that they're doing that is because they know that the system has become unsustainable. And it's not a matter of if it's going to collapse, it's a matter of when it's going to collapse. Once more, we're $21.5 trillion in debt. I truly believe that the government shutdown, which happened about, give or take, about a week and a half before Christmas of 2018 did not occur over a southern border issue. There's no doubt we do have a southern border issue. But I truly believe that the United States government was convinced that a natural catastrophe was fixing to hit here in the center of the United States towards the New Madrid Fault. And whenever this occurred, it was going to basically throw the majority of the Americans off into a state of an emergency. Now keep in mind that whenever Katrina hit in southern Mississippi, the governor of the state of Mississippi immediately put out an emergency, state of an emergency, to the degree that if you was in your house and if you seen somebody stealing your 22s on your SUV out in your driveway, it gave you the right that you could have taken your 30-06 or your high-powered rifle and literally flattened or executed, exterminated that person by stealing your property, because under a state of emergency, it expands the reach of the long arm of the law, and basically you fall into a completely different category. Please listen to some more of this, because it actually explains just exactly what I just got through talking about. Like I said, I think the government shut down for 35 days because they was concerned of a natural catastrophe. And they're using the wall as an excuse for that shutdown. I know that they know that we are at our wits' end whenever it comes to a nation that is unsustainable. So please listen to the rest of this to my viewers, and I think that you will be intrigued. Please listen.
On the next Project Blue Book.
Cigar sheet craft nearly takes out an airplane. Get a base reformer Nazis are working on rockets. Von Braun, he's ahead of the whole thing.
What the hell just happened?
It worked. Project Blue Book. New episode tonight at 10 on History. March 16th, 2012. Washington, D.C. President Obama signs the National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order. For many Americans, the directive goes virtually unnoticed. But to some, the presidential decree was both disturbing and alarming.
March of 2012, Obama signed basically martial law into effect. And at any time, he can sign away all of our rights. And I mean all of our rights. There is no constitution.
The president issued an executive order that seems to allow the executive branch to seize pretty much whatever it wants in an emergency for use in protecting the defense assets of the United States. In very broad terms, it applies to what's called the defense industrial base, all of the private companies that do work with the government.
Since the beginning of the Cold War, presidents like Eisenhower, Kennedy, right through Reagan, and George W. Bush, and Obama today have all reissued executive orders allowing for the commandeering of telecommunications, water, food, highways, even the public in forced labor during a catastrophic event like a nuclear war or giant earthquakes. And these executive orders are on the books to suspend the Constitution and basically bring in martial law. And not just the seizure of all infrastructure and energy, but the seizure of individuals as human resources.
They can take you and tell you where you're going to work and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Down to that level, if it's all executed. So then you take a look at, well, how are they going to enforce that? You know, there's 314 million Americans here. How do you enforce something like that? Well, it's simple. You militarize the police force. Now, all of a sudden, you have a standing army in the United States.
Nothing happened in March of 2012 for this martial law to be declared by our president, but it happened. This power now in the hands of any president is frightening.
Is it possible that the U.S. government is secretly preparing to use the threat of a nuclear attack or a natural disaster in order to enact martial law? Could they really eliminate basic freedoms and take control of all guns, survival materials, equipment, and food supplies?
Sure they can. And that's exactly what they're planning on doing in case of this type of degree. The reason why that Obama signed into order was because of the 12-12-12. You keep in mind that we've already lived through the beginning chapters of going from the 20th century to the 21st century pertaining to Y2K. Everybody stood around, sat around New Year's Eve night, not knowing if their computers was going to shut down, and supposedly all the airplanes was going to fall out of the sky. Well, did that occur? No. But there was a malicious rumor that come from South America pertaining to the Mayans, pertaining to 12-12-12. That on the 12th month, the 12th day, 20 and 12, that things was going to shut down. And that something big was going to occur. The Mayans, in reality, was predicting the beginning of something rather than the ending of something because of the alignment. But once more, what was our government secretly doing in behind our backs? They was signing in letters of decoration of giving them the authority that they could basically do as they wish towards a bunch of tyranny, overpowered, evil, demonic people who are concerned about saving their own skins, but is not concerned about saving ours. We have reached a very, very pivotal point in history pertaining to the $21.5 trillion that were in debt. And the government knows it. Because somewhere in the peak of 22 to 24 trillion is whenever we will no longer be able to maintain the interest on the national debt. We're not paying a penny right now on the principal. And we're barely being able to maintain the interest. Once it exceeds a certain amount, then we will no longer be able to even maintain the interest. So there's no doubt, technically speaking, this government is, in fact, already broke. They just haven't announced it yet as far as starting a national crisis. But they're waiting in the shadows, knowing not if it's going to occur, but when it occurs, towards what they're going to do and how they're going to do it.
What this is saying is that if there is a declared state of war, the executive branch and the administration will have direct control over important sectors of the U.S. economy. If you're a petroleum refinery and the government says we need the oil and gas for the war machine, then the gas pumps at the gas stations go dry.
The wording of the executive order is pretty clear. It gives the president the authority to use the resources of these companies in order to...
He basically becomes a king at that point in time towards ruling over the land as a tyrant or in tyranny. Also, if there's ever a state of war declared here in America, that relieves all responsibility and accountability pertaining to any major or private insurance company. To the point, if mass rioting breaks out, the insurance company does not have to pay for some heathen burning down your farm or burning down your business or destroying your business by a bunch of looters or whatever. If a state of war is ever declared, Under the War Act, all insurance companies are exempt towards not having to be liable towards any damages that have occurred to any of their customers.
Protect national security in an emergency.
In all of United States history, martial law has rarely been formally declared. Many believe, however, that in 2005, a version of it was employed during the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, when an alleged order was issued to police officers authorizing them to shoot looters.
And it was not just looters, or it was not just authorized to the military, but it was authorized to the citizens of the homeowner, that once more, if they seen somebody violating their property, they had the right to actually take them down right then and there.
But now, in today's technologically advanced world, the specter of...
So there are certain laws that can be applied that basically turns Big Brother into almost a god in and of itself, to the point that Big Brother can rule over our lives in any form or fashion, and there is nothing that the American citizens can do about it.
An all-powerful federal government declaring martial law takes on a whole new meaning, especially when considering the president's ability to flip a so-called internet kill switch.
The idea of an internet kill switch has been talked about ever since the internet broke wild back in the 1970s. And it certainly can be done through powering off backbone provider machines, or simply by mounting massive distributed denial of service attacks on the major hubs of the internet. And for an agency like the NSA, which has the computer power to do it, they could shut off the internet simply by jamming it to the point of unusability.
In a classified document, which we've seen because of one of the Edward Snowden leaks, spells out very precisely under what criteria and how the executive branch will go about declaring that a certain node in the communication system or a certain set of servers are critically damaged and therefore, for a short period of time, will be under government control.
And that short time could be anything from 6 days to 6 months to 6 years, depending upon what occurred here up onto the land of the free. You keep in mind the Civil War lasted for many years. There has been other occurrences that has happened here in the United States that just did not hit and miss overnight and was gone, but lasted for a period of days, weeks, months, and sometimes even years. So what they're talking about here is really, really real, and the citizens really need to pay close attention to what is being said here.
But what could happen if the nation's computer network was suddenly compromised?
It would shut us down, and it would put us into the dark ages. So many people now have solely relied upon smartphone technology to the point that now people can't live without it. It's almost like a drug dealer. They have given us a product that now that we have become adapted to, we have become hooked to. We have solely relied upon to this product, kind of like a drug, and if that drug is ever taken away, then we become susceptible in accepting whatever that they offer us for a solution or a substitute for that same product. And this is where I think the plans of bringing in the New World Order pertaining to the Mark of the Beast 666 comes in at. And if people that get a hold of this material hasn't never read the Bible and don't never know nothing about biblical Bible prophecy, they need to learn what this is all about, because this is pertaining to the end of time. This is pertaining to our Achilles heel. Not just here in America, but throughout the world. Because somebody, regardless whether it's the Rothschilds or whoever, has already sat down and done an equation on this towards how that it's going to unfold. A matter of fact, the Bilderbergs a few years ago made an open degree to the general public that they was announcing that Lucifer, the Antichrist that actually got kicked out of heaven, was the supreme being above and beyond all other beings. And that they had made an announcement to eliminate at least 1 billion people from the planet. How are they going to eliminate 1 billion people from the planet pertaining to population control if this is not already in the works? That's just it. It is in the works. Is there a secret society? Is there a secret book that have already pre-planned our future? Absolutely. And if you don't think that, you're very, very naive.
Is the government prepared to overcome a digital disaster? Could an enemy really bring the American economy and infrastructure to its knees with just one keystroke?
Sure it could. Over whatever reason.
February 16th, 2010, Washington, D.C. Cyber Shockwave, a simulated cyber attack on the United States, starts assaulting the computers of key government officials. By the end of the 12-hour war game, it is clear that if the attack had been real, the U.S. would have been virtually shut down.
I recently spoke with a very senior military official who just left the government. And I said, what's the one thing that keeps you up at night? What do you worry about over the next 5 to 10 years? And he said, cyber.
In this country, what we're really worried about, and what we're probably not as prepared as we should be for, is a cyber attack. Something that shuts down our power grids, our sanitation systems, communication systems, things that run our transportation, train stations, the ability to fuel your cars.
All these things could lead to doomsday because we wouldn't get food, we wouldn't have refrigeration. If that were to happen, we could be in a situation where millions of people starve to death because
we could be in a situation to where a great deal of us would become extinct. A matter of fact, in 2007, while I was up in Land Between the Lakes, God had showed me these things, and I issued out a warning to the general public that God had showed me that there was going to be electrical disturbances. And these electrical disturbances can come in various forms, regardless whether it be solar flares, a improvised mechanism up in space, whether or not it was a meteor shower, whether or not it was natural catastrophes pertaining to storms, severe ice storms towards causing the electrical lines to fall, or just the grids in and of itself towards them becoming overloaded and not being able to handle the demand. That God had showed me that there was going to be electrical disturbances coming. And because of it, I was basically treated as a homegrown terrorist to the point of them shutting down one of the Kentucky dams on the Tennessee River Lake up by Grand Rivers and Benton, Kentucky. And them going in and searching for bombs and thinking because that I had issued out this warning or this advisory of electrical disturbances that I was going to cause an electrical disturbance. Keep in mind, my own very people right here in Weakley County, in Martin, Tennessee, by the name of David Moore, that was the captain or the chief of the Martin Police, basically done the exact same thing because I was issuing out an advisory that there was going to be a great deal of controversy in my life that was going to be as the noise of thunder, according to Revelations chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. And because I had put out this advisory, they tried to lock me up for falsifying files by trying to categorize me as me being a homegrown terrorist. And the whole time I was only prophesying that in which what was going to occur. I am thoroughly convinced that the shutdown that we have recently went through in the past 35 days was not necessarily because of the upcoming events pertaining to the southern border. There's no doubt we got problems on the southern border. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, is that the reason why the government shut down part of the government? Or was they expecting for something else to occur up until about 7 or 8 days before the deadline? God showed me, Dennis, back up, retract. In other words, delay the event that you had predicted that was going to occur in 2018. And I done just exactly that. And in doing so, I thanked my Creator. I thanked my Lord and my Savior, Jesus Christ, because He was willing to spare us the grief of a major, mighty earthquake in the New Madrid Fault area, which would basically be from Memphis, Tennessee, all the way up to St. Louis. That would probably kill at least 12 to 15,000 lives, not counting the damage and not counting the problems that would have occurred. Please, let's listen to some more of this program. This is very, very serious. This does not need to be taken in a lightly form at all.
There's no food.
So just how vulnerable is the United States to a digital attack?
We are very susceptible to a nuclear or a digital attack in whatever regard, regardless whether it was a solar flare or meteor bombardments. Even the United States government put out a warning about a week before Christmas towards advising or recommending for their citizens to start properly preparing for a doomsday scenario. But yet and all, they wanted to attack the people down in Mount Carmel pertaining to the Davidians because of them doing the exact same thing. You can't tell me that we don't have people in high-ranking positions that knows that this thing is fixing to collapse. We have become an unsustainable government. And unless we're smart enough to figure out another plan to take care of this hiccup, and this hiccup could be anything from 6 days to 6 weeks to 6 years. Look at how long the Civil War lasted. This could be extraordinarily serious for millions and millions and millions of people, not just here in America, but throughout the planet.
And how quickly could the government regain control of the nation's computer infrastructure?
Cyber is complicated because so many of the threats are against the private sector, not just the government.
The Department of Homeland Security is technically in charge of protecting federal government computer systems from cyber attack, and private corporations are in charge of protecting the internet infrastructure because 90% of the internet doesn't belong to the government. And this is one of the reasons why it's been so hard to come up with a coherent cybersecurity policy.
The military thinks, gee, the whole electricity grid of the U.S. may be vulnerable to a cyber attack. Well, then they have to go see all the electricity companies and say, we need you to spend this money, or maybe we need the government to appropriate money, but it's going to a private company. So how does that work exactly? So I think cyber is, again, more complicated in that way.
The federal government has reportedly spent billions of dollars to secretly prepare for cyber attacks. In May 2010, the United States Cyber Command Center commenced operations at Fort Meade in Maryland. Its leader, the director of the National Security Agency.
The Cyber Command Center, as part of NSA, is tracking threats against U.S. government computers and systems, as well as private systems. And if China were to actually engage in all-out cyber attack on the United States, the Cyber Command Center could very well launch a counterattack using the same kind of techniques to take out China's communications and China's computer systems. That would be the equivalent of declaring war on China, but that's the era that we live in.
And to think that I come back here in 2014 to put up with all this nonsense and all this crazy insanity coming from the Ridgway and the Sheffield family and other various peoples in the neighborhood, to think that I come back here for the authorities, the judges, the attorneys, the uppity-ups, to allow for them to declare war upon the Jackson estate. And the whole time I'm trying to help the citizens in not only Weakley County and not only Obion County, but I'm trying to help the citizens of the country, of the planet, towards opening up their eyes to think that they have sat idly by in dereliction of duty and would not protect us and take care of us, and they're still up there right now drawing their big fat checks, drawing about $80,000 to $100,000 a year, and the community, the citizens, have still not put an end to this? I have never seen this country turned so far upside down to the point that where it is right now. Even as I sit and speak and I make this video, there is plans towards trying to dismember Donald Trump from his position of the seat that he holds towards him being the president of this country. There are secret coup type legal tactics that various people are going to try to implement upon to our chief and commander, even as I make this video. And to think that I had to come back to such hideous, idiotic, barbaric, cruel treatment as this, it makes me sick. It breaks my heart that people like Tommy Moore and Tommy Thomas and David Moore and other departments of the judicial system in this area, including the governor and the lieutenant governor and other statesmen, have sat back and played this game with not just the Jackson family, but with all these families that are soon to wish that they had opened their eyes and that they had taken heed to the warnings that various people, such as myself, has been putting out there to the general public.
Is it really possible that doomsday will come in the form of cyber warfare? Many believe that the answer is not a matter of if, but when. And that even now, the nation's critical infrastructures are severely at risk.
One of my biggest fears is that the compartmentalization of these plans within the executive branch, between the branches, is so great that if there were a catastrophe and emergency, people wouldn't know whom to contact and what to do. The secrecy itself would get in the way of smooth and efficient functioning. The secrecy itself could hasten catastrophe.
As the countdown to doomsday continues, many fear that Mother Nature may be mankind's biggest threat. And some experts are warning that hurricanes, tsunamis, and earthquakes are just child's play compared to other deadly disasters looming over the planet.
Oh, that sounds good. Ooh, check this out.
Silverware.
July 20th, 2009, Washington, D.C. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, delivers an ominous speech, warning that perhaps the most dangerous threat to the planet is an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, that could be triggered by a solar flare or a nuclear blast in outer space.
Basically, in layman's terms, it's taking a nuclear bomb and then exploding it in our stratosphere. It sends a radio wave of millions and millions of volts of energy throughout the atmosphere. And it basically will fry out everything that you have that's electronic. So everything that you have that makes your world go round, from your cell phones to your car, everything would cease in an instant.
If there was a giant EMP, either man-made or by the sun, scientists are in agreement that it could knock out all the major power systems of the world. And then over 400 nuclear reactors would start melting down in a matter of weeks without electrical power or diesel power. That's one of the big threats.
It's not just flip the switch and it's all coming back on tomorrow. In fact, it'll be out for as much as 10 years because some of the transformers and the infrastructure will take that long to rebuild under normal conditions.
Will an electromagnetic pulse really destroy the American society? Or will doomsday arrive in the form of something completely different?
There's so many threats out there that would create a doomsday situation. Nuclear threat, a biological, radiological threat, or an EMP attack. These are all things that are possible. I think the most likely attack would be radiological or biological, because it would be very, very easy for terrorists to bring in these weapons to a city like Washington or New York and just wipe out millions of people. It's almost a miracle that this has not happened already.
There's other scenarios. I mean, you just spin a globe and point your finger and you're going to find a disaster happening. Mother Nature is never going to show her cards. Whether it's an earthquake, tornadoes, tsunamis, things that you can't control, those are the things I most fear.
Doomsday isn't really going to be a day. It's kind of a period of time, and I think we're already in it.
Doomsday is not a question of if, it's a question of when. And it's going to happen in the twinkling of an eye. And when something happens to the government and they want to protect their own. They are actively building deep underground bunkers so that they can survive. It's about continuity of government, and that's what their agenda is. And so you have to ask yourself, what do they know that we don't know? And I would say a lot.
I think the government doesn't tell us a tenth of the information that they have. And that's just to keep the people from panicking. There's just nothing they can do to save everybody. So I don't think that they would even tell us if there was something going on.
I'm not privy to the secrets of the U.S. government. I haven't been for 20 years, but I'll tell you this. It's very hard to keep up with the threats. They think they're sort of on top of them, but they are not certain. And it's a case where if you get surprised, the surprise can be very sudden and very nasty.
We don't know what they know. But I will tell you, from the outside looking in, what's coming for us must be horrific. We're on the verge of the worst case scenario, because that's what they're preparing for.
With so many threats facing our nation,
and I'm going to tell you another reason why that the government knows this. They know that the Bible is true. They know that the Bible is real. They know that the prophecies that Jesus prophesied, that in the end, that as you shall see the days approaching, that no flesh shall be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, those days will and would be shortened. They know that the prophecies are true, and they're coming true, and they're already here. Because of it, they're making drastic moves in protecting themselves, but whenever it comes to them protecting us, that's where that they have failed. But the American people are still under this cloud of deception because they have been deceived in thinking that their government's going to take care of them. The government's going to take care of them. And I got news for you. The government is going to be lucky or fortunate to be able to take care of itself, much less take care of everybody else. Because we have reached a plateau to the point that it is going to be unsustainable. And they know it. And they know it. And because of it, because of this bad governing ship that has happened, it has put all of our lives in peril. All.
enormous cataclysmic event inevitable? And when the end comes, will we be prepared? One thing is certain. The doomsday clock is ticking, and it is only a matter of time before our time runs out.
Tick-tock. Tick-tock. We must have a plan to pull, and then pull to the plan. Good luck to all of us in this perilous time that the Bible has taught us and inspired us to be in right now. And like I said, the meek will inherit the earth. I just hope that the new system that is going to have to replace this system will be a more fair, honest, truer system that we can all take the initiative of being prosperous and going forth into the future for not only ourselves but for our children and our children's children. Shalom. God bless. And God bless America.